our special edition of In Focus tonight, straight after the president addressing the nation tonight on urgent action to bring the national security under control and prevent further unrest, outlining a number of things that the president and the state have decided to do. The president, as the commander-in-chief of the South African National Defence Force, deploying the South African National Defence Force to support the work of the SAPS. Also, the National Joint Team enhancing its deployment into the various affected areas, including the National Security Council now meeting twice a day to map out a way in which they're going to respond. But there's also been some responses as far as collaborations between business as well as governing leaders and public representatives, and the work that the president is going to do with opposition political parties. All that we've got for you here on In Focus tonight. First, though, let's have a look at what's making news this hour. Desperate times call for desperate measures. President Cyril Ramaphosa announces that all available security resources will be scrambled into a response to these ongoing incidents of violence and looting in parts of KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng. Now, as violence and mayhem grips parts of the country, the South African National Defence Force is deployed to KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng to restore order. And the rand slumps to its weakest level against the US dollar in more than 2 months as riots slow the economic growth. Good Monday night, and thank you for joining us. I am Thabo Mdluli. As we continue to witness scenes of looting across the country, let's get reaction now from Black Business Management Forum President Andile Nomlala and COSATU President Zingiswa Losi about the impact that this will have on businesses and job security. Good evening to you both, and thank you very much for your time joining us tonight here on In Focus.
Good evening, Thabo, and the viewers of Newzroom Afrika.
Andile, let me begin with you. We were expecting the president to map out urgent action that the state is going to take, at least the security establishment is going to take to secure control in the country and to prevent further unrest. Did we get a clear plan that is tangible that we can bank on?
Thank you, Thabo, and thanks for having us. Thabo, let me start by saying that let me start by making an impassionate plea to South Africans. We know that the South Africans that are out on the streets are South Africans that are desperate, are South Africans that are economically marginalized, are South Africans that have nothing else to lose, and they have given their lives. We see mothers with the kids on their back, dodging bullets, trying to earn a living. And we say that they must desist from doing the acts that are destructive, that are violent. And as the president has said, that's not the character of South Africans. But we are very worried and very concerned that this cannot be reduced to just only a problem of riots, a problem of criminality. We don't see criminality to a mother who has a child on their back, who dares the COVID threats, and who dares the police, the stones and the bullets to try and get to a shop. But this is not how we as South Africans believe that we must solve our problems. Our problems, Thabo, are deep-rooted, and they are economical, and they are socio-economical in their nature. And I think what we need to do as a start is to address on an urgent basis an eminent economic reforms that will deal decisively with the issue of inequality in our country, with the issue of unemployment in our country, and with the issue of the desperate, marginalized black youth. Those are our sisters and brothers. They have been failed by a system that couldn't give them good quality education for them to fend off on their own. So we say, we agree with the president that we must not get and reduce ourselves, no matter how desperate we are, into resorting to violence. Violence, looting, and the criminality element that has joined in would not serve our people. The main people that are losers in this whole thing are the very same brothers and sisters that live and work in these shops that are being looted.
Right.
So that's our first position, Tabo.
Zingiswa, reflect for us on the looting and the continued destruction that we are seeing, and the narrative around the particular destruction. Many saying this is a ticking time bomb that we have been talking about actually now exploding right before our very eyes. Will these events determine the ideological and strategic direction of our economic policy going forward?
Thank you very much, Thabo and Andile, and the listeners and the viewers. And indeed, I want to agree with the sentiments that have been shared by Andile. And as COSATU, we have always said that the levels of unemployment, inequality, and poverty in our country, particularly high rate of unemployment, as we look now, we're sitting at over 32%. Which means it's over 7.2 million that are unemployed in our country. It is a ticking time bomb. And we have always said for years that it's a ticking time bomb that is waiting to explode. And we have always said that its explosion will be in the face of policymakers and decision makers in our country. And that is why we have always endeavored as organized labor, business, constituency, government, and community at the level of NEDLEC to come up with alternatives, which part of it talks to the economic recovery and reconstruction plan amongst many. And this, which we have seen unfolding in our country, worries us because then it reverses what we thought we are making strides in moving forward. Hence a plea to South Africans. You know, Thabo, I was reading amongst the things that have been circulating, a person reflecting in Transkei, or in the Eastern Cape rather, that when they wanted to remove Sebe or Kozo, they destroyed property, they destroyed businesses. Today, those people that worked in those factories are still unemployed. Those factories have never recovered. And this is why we're making this plea also as a federation, that for us to recover from where we are, because COVID has also given us a blow in relation to unemployment. You will remember just last week, we were celebrating the extension of TERS to the sectors that are hardly affected in the 2 weeks of COVID. And all of us wondering, how are we going to recover in these 2 weeks? And yesterday, the president made an announcement of a further 2 weeks lockdown, and which means those workers that were supposed and expected to go back to work have not been able to do so. But this morning, we got calls, Thabo, from workers, particularly in the health industry, who were wondering how are they going to get to work. As the president have said, others could not be at work. And those that were supposed to be at work and those that were supposed to be attended to, that could not happen. And that is why we're making a plea that as South Africans, let us find solutions to our problems.
Yeah.
And we are capable of doing so.
Yeah.
And if we can separate the legalities to other issues so that we allow attorneys, those that are employed to do so, to run and do their work. And we allow those that are expected to build this economy to also do so. Because we need these businesses to be up and running so that we can be able to create and have our brothers and sisters employed. And lastly, you know, there is a brother like Ilehwat who opened his business, employed 4 people at least. His business is destroyed now. It was just few months down the line when he opened his business. It has been destroyed. It has been a victim of the vandalism that took place. It means he has lost the capital that he has put in, but also those 4 employees have no work to go to tomorrow.
Yeah.
And we know 4 employees are responsible for the rest of the family members who are dependent on the salary of them. And it means if we do not sit down and speak to issues and find solutions to them, violence and destruction is not a solution, but it takes us years to recover from this, if we would ever recover.
Let's talk, Andile, about that. I mean, luckily, quite amongst many, I think 30 black businesses looted during this time. The president also talking of food insecurity, a possibility. The Franchise Association talking about losing 10 of their stores in KZN and in Gauteng. Other retailers reporting as many as 500 supermarkets that have been looted up until this point. I mean, are we at a real threat here of food security, but also of losing the potential of black business entrepreneurs who are so much needed in light of the level of unemployment that we have in the country?
Thabo, thank you. I think the main issue, Thabo, here is that the reality of the havoc that is being caused in our country. President Beki taught us one thing very important, is that before you are able to deal with the problem, you must be able to diagnose what is the problem. The problem that we're sitting in is that our people's desperation and our people's vulnerability, our people's non-acceptableness of a situation where they are not party to this democracy. I'm talking to you as a black professional who's a middle-class person in South Africa who has benefited from the democratic dispensation of our country. But my cousins, my sisters, my brothers are part of the people that we call today mob. And those people didn't put themselves into the conditions that they are in. They are in those conditions because there has been irresponsible leadership in our country. There has been irresponsible leadership in the private sector. There is irresponsible leadership. I hope that President Ramaphosa, when he met with Busa, he first engaged them and its members, particularly BASA, about the need for the banks to accept, to disperse and be party to the stimulus package that they rejected of the president, where black businesses, where businesses in our country should have benefited and be helped to stand on its own 2 feet. Now we are in the situation that we are in, and there could be any other trigger, Thabo. Don't be confused by the so-called trigger of KwaZulu-Natal. We don't think the problem has anything to do with ethnicity. We don't think the problem has anything to do with regionalism. South Africans are starving. South Africans are desperate everywhere. Now, if we want to take the country to the direction that we want, and we know that our people are patient, we know that our people are disciplined, and they have been disciplined for many years in the squalor that they are in, we must then put measures today, starting with making sure that the banks will come to the party to support an emergence of black businesses, an emergence of established and existing businesses. And we must ensure, Thabo, today that the value chains of the private white-owned companies are acceptable and are accepting black distribution, black integration. They are able to give black people opportunities. Black business cannot only thrive and survive by having opportunities from only government tenders. Even at those government tenders, there are no measures to make sure that the implementation of their work and the work that is done is in the midst of all sorts of corruption interventions that these people make. Now, what we're saying is that once we have diagnosed the problem, and the problem is socio-economic, you can't find criminals in desperate people. You don't make victims villains. We know and we trust that our people tomorrow in South Africa will desist from doing crime, will desist from being party to violence, but then the message must be clear from the leadership of our country. What is the course of action for their future and their hope?
I want to bring you in, Andile. I mean, as you're hearing there, private businesses now taking it upon themselves to protect their property are saying before the break, I understand the socio-economic dilemma that was maybe self-created by the ruling ANC, and they have to now deal with that situation. However, there are businesses that have now been affected by this. Others are intervening in all forms of way with private security coming into play. What do you say to those businesses today, the 30 that have lost their businesses? They've been affected professionally and at a personal level. There was nothing said about them in this intervention.
It's a sad day, Thabo, to realize that these days those that who have means and those that who have property would be forced and be reduced to having to take the law to themselves. And we know, Thabo, and I, as the BMF president and the organization, we met this evening. Our message is clear that we know that our people are not violent. And we know and we beg them to desist from no matter how desperate we are. And we can't begin to imagine their level of desperation. But we make an impassionate plea to them not to distract the little that they have, the little that they benefit from. But the reality of the matter, Thabo, is that if we don't make the necessary urgent interventions, we will forever hide. I'm talking to you, I'm in Sentin. I will forever hide in the high walls of Rhinestone. My own brothers, when they break down that wall, they would be more vicious to me than the apartheid people that oppressed us for many years, because they would feel that my progress and success was at their expense, was the betrayal that they live with. Our people have been failed, Thabo, and the message must be clear from all of us across the country as leaders. And we can't finger point people today. We are leaders ourselves. We will be leaders of this country into the future. We must take responsibility and back them. If you then exercise force, if you then use the army, there is a bigger army of black unemployed youth on the streets. You must be sensitive to what they are going through and beg them to desist from making and creating violence. But in that message, Thabo, you must accompany it with an urgent, imminent intervention, like to say you would return the 350 grand to the youth, because the environment is still the same. They can't eat. We beg them not to go to the stores, but we are not saying where they will find bread. And we say to them, they must go home starving and remain calm. We have a plan. Right. And there must be a plan that must be defined.
Zingiswa, we have, of course, identified what the challenge is. The trigger could have been the arrest of former President Jacob Zuma, but the real problem is a demoralized labor force that is now descending into chaos and disorder. How do you retain that order? How do you bring back that order? One would say the biggest challenge people will have is that COSATU is in the alliance. You are part of the infrastructure. You're part of the system that is supposed to be well aware of these issues and well aware of these things.
Thank you, Thabo. COSATU has always been in the alliance with the ANC. And we know during these times like this question gets to be thrown. And when COSATU makes strides to ensure that millions of workers in this country, for an example, get to benefit from the national minimum wage, which now domestic workers will be equaled to it by 2022, and farm workers are receiving that national minimum wage, that is not celebrated. COSATU is not in government, but we are part of a political alliance. We raise these issues. It has always been this federation, COSATU, that has raised the crisis that this country is faced with and is going to have to deal with in the near future. It has always been this federation, COSATU, that has put on the table alternatives to what will bring this economy to where we should be. We have put papers at the level of Nedbank, alternatives. We have always been that federation that has been proactive, saying to the ruling party, the African National Congress, to the SACP and to South Africans, that this is